Class 11th, Economics. Name of the book, Indian Economic Development. Chapter 1, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. Good morning, children. Here am I with the explanation of Chapter 1, that is, Indian Economy on the Eve of Independence. Let us start this chapter by giving you a brief idea about the economic history of our country. When we talk about economic history of India, we go back in the past and we analyze how different people who came to India to rule over this country affected the economic condition of the country. When we talk about the past, a past that existed before the Britishers, there those whosoever came, they came and they settled down in this country and they adopted this country as if this country belonged to them, and they were the part and parcel of this country and started doing things that was not only for their personal betterment but largely for the betterment of the country. But when Britishers came, things were largely different. When Britishers came, they came to this country not for the growth and development of India as a whole, but they came to exploit the resources that they heard existed in abundance in this country to meet their vested interests. So this is how there exists a difference between the British rule and different foreigners who came and settled, especially Muslims and other people who came and settled in this country and made it a part and parcel of their life. So that is why before we start about the Indian economy that exists at present, it is very much important for a beginner of an economics to understand what was the glorious past of our country, what was the policy that was initiated by the Britishers that exploited the abundant wealth of this nation and brought this nation into poverty, brought this nation into developing itself as an underdeveloped country of the world. So this whole book rather is going to take into consideration that perspective of British rule for all the chapters that we are going to study. So this book is going to give us a brief idea about the basic features of an Indian economy that existed during the British rule and after the British rule, how it impacted the whole economy in the present sense or in the present terms. Then we are going to take into considerations different policy formulation that was adopted by the Britishers at that time, which shaped not only the economic scene of the country at that specific time but even today. Then how the economic policies that was largely vested to meet the requirements of the British people motivated Indians to develop a sense of nation state or a nationalism which led them towards the fight for independence. So all these things resulted into into the development of a feeling that motivated people to fight for their rights. So how all these things happened in our country from economic perspective, that is what we are going to study here. Now when we are going to start with this chapter, we are going to take into consideration what was the reason for the low economic development under the colonial period. So this is what is going to be the second subheading that we are going to take into consideration, that how the economic development during the colonial rule was very low, at lower rate. So before when we talk about the economic development, the first and the foremost thing that comes into our mind is agriculture. Agriculture has been the mainstay of our economy. It has been the source of livelihood for our people, largely because in the past during the colonial rule, even when Britishers came, even before Britishers came, India was a country which was self-sufficient. It was forming, or it was functioning on a structure where each village were their own republic. It means that the working unit of the village was divided in such that everyone was getting some sort of work and also a source of livelihood for them. For example, let me explain it this way, that in a village there were people who were into farming. In a village there were people into handicraft industries. Okay, so what was happening was this, that the farmers, they were producing goods, and those goods, they were used by handicrafts industries to meet the requirements for their production activities, small manufacturing units that they have developed to meet their own production requirements. And the goods that was being generated was the demand of small provinces that existed. Like example, they were producing a piece of art, or they were producing a good different variety of clothes that was being used with lots of artistic work on it, that was being used by the courtiers, that was used by the princes, that was used by the king. So it had its demand. So this way each village was self-sufficient in itself, and they were not dependent on another villages. Agriculture, the farmers, whatever they were producing, they were not only producing food crops, they were also producing cash crops that was being sold to the handicraft industries. And the food that they were producing, that was not only meeting their requirement, but it was also in surplus, which could be given to these manufacturing industry, people involved in manufacturing industry, to meet their food requirements. So this way the villages functioned in such a way that they were very much independent in their requirement. They were not dependent on any other village or on the kings for meeting their requirements. So another important thing, that whatever, it was not only in abundance that these goods were produced, these goods, they were produced in good quality also. Not only the quantity that matters, it is the quality also. So the kind of produce that was generated in the Indian economy was of a superior fine quality, and this quality, it had markets, world market. People across the world were very much attracted by the quantity and the quality of the goods that they would get from this country, be it cotton, be it silk textiles, be it metal, precious stones, wide variety of product that was available, that was of superior quality. So all these products, it enjoyed a huge world market, and this created a strong reputation for the Indian market. So what attracted the Britishers. So Britishers, when they started coming to this country, they when they started coming to this country, they were very much shocked to see the climatic conditions, to see the way people were self-satisfied, to see how people were engrossed in their sources of generating livelihood. There was no chaos, there was no confusion, everything was managed properly, and everyone was self-sufficient. But Britishers were not happy in seeing this, because they had come with different objective. They had come largely to loot this country to meet their vested interests. So what these colonial people did was this, that they started pursuing an economic policy that was not concerned with the protection and promotion of economic interests of India, but rather with the protection and promotion of the economic interest of the home country, that is the British economy. And this policy of the Britishers, it brought a fundamental change in the structure of the economy, Indian economy. Now, British government never tried to estimate the national income of this country or the per capita income of this country. So this is here important to mention, because the growth and development of any country is dependent on its national income or the per capita income. Britishers never wanted to go into that direction, because they were not at all concerned with India's growth and development. So they never took this initiative of measuring the national income or the per capita income. So when we are talking this point here, I need to clarify you what is national income. When we talk about national income, it refers to the total income of the country that is produced in that particular current year. The value of goods and services that is produced in a country in that particular financial year is known as the national income of the country. Now, when we talk about per capita income, this you have already studied in your previous class, 10th class. When we talk about per capita income, it is the average income, that is the national income, is being divided by the population of the country. That gives us the per capita income of the country. So, British government, it did not attempt it it did not attempt to estimate the national or per capita income, because they were not at all concerned or bothered about the growth and development of the country. But there were some Indians who were very much worried about the growth of this country, and they were educated people, and they started taking an initiative in order to measure or estimate the national income of the country. And there is a name mentioned. We have got Dadabhai Naoroji, we have got William Digbay, Findlay Shiraz, V.K.R.V. Rao and R.C. Desai. So these are some of the names that is mentioned in your book. And out of them, V.K.R.V. Rao, whose findings or whose estimate is considered to be very significant, because it gave actually a true picture of the economy, that yes, India is a prosperous country and it is prospering. But then when the Britishers started residing in this country, what happened? The aggregate real income you all know, when we talk about there is a difference between real income and money income. When we are talking about the real income, it refers to the amount of goods and services which money is able to buy. So if at present 5 rupee is making me buy 2 pencils, and probably say next year if that same 5 rupee is helping me in buying just 1 pencil, then what we are saying that the real income is declining. Real income refers to the purchasing power. So that purchasing power is determined by the value of the money, and the value of the money depends upon the economic growth and development of a country. So if there is a decline in the economic growth and development of the country, it could be, there are so many factors that is going to have an impact onto it. So when there is a decline in the economic growth and development, that brings down a decline in the real income. So what was the finding? It was this, that aggregate real income of the country was declining, and they said that it was less than 2% in the first half of the 20th century. So the per capita income was also very less. It was just 0.5% growth. There was just 0.5% growth in the per capita income of the country at that particular time. So what we are concluding here in this whole section is this, that the economic development of the country during the colonial period, when we talk about the agriculture, or we talk about when we talk about agriculture growth, or we talk about the estimation of the national income of the country, or we talk about the policy initiatives that was taken by the when we talk about the policy initiatives that was taken by the citizens of the country at particular time, that all affected that was very much negative towards the way it meant to bring growth and development to this country. So all in all, there was low level of economic development under this colonial rule. Now if we move on to next subsection of this chapter, we are going to take into consideration agriculture sector. Okay, when we talk about this agriculture sector, I hope it is visible to you. So when we talk about this agriculture sector, we are going to take into consideration that what were the percentage of the people who were engaged in the agriculture sector. It was around 85% people were working in the agriculture sector, and the productivity of the agriculture sector was gradually becoming very less during this time, largely because when we talk about the productivity, we all know that how much amount of goods or crops a piece of land is able to produce. So one of an important reason that is mentioned here in relation to the low agricultural productivity of the country is the land settlement system that was being adopted during the British rule. So when we talk about the land settlement system, let me explain it to you in detail. In India, people were having their own piece of land, and they were doing farming and producing goods, which was not only meeting their requirement but also the requirement of the citizens of the country. Now what happened when these Britishers came? They started asking for rent. Okay, and when they started asking for rent, then it meant that whatever be the amount of crop that a farmer is able to produce, out of that a substantial amount has to be given to the Britishers. And this was something which was forced upon the Indians by the Britishers in order to generate income. So zamindari system got established, and through this zamindari system, land was given to the farmers. Farmers were working on those lands. They were producing goods, or they were producing crops, and the produce was being taken by the zamindars in the form of rent. Now, whether the production is sufficient to pay the rent or not, that was not at all considered by the zamindars. Why so? Because zamindars were also forced to give an amount to the Britishers. If they did not give that stipulated amount to the Britishers, then they lost their zamindari system. Then they lost their zamindari. So what happened? These zamindars, they became very rude, and they started having very harsh policies towards the farmers. If there is famine, if there is low production, if there is any health issue in the family of the farmers, that was not their thing to think over. They just wanted their land rent, and that is how it made these zamindars more loyal to the Britishers. So it created a kind of division in the society, the poor peasants and the zamindars, or the landlords. So this was something which literally act as a breaking down of the backbone of the Indian agriculture system. Apart from this thing that they adopted, that is zamindari system, there was one more system that they adopted, that was the Rotwari system. In the Rotwari system, if a farmer was having his land, then also he has to pay an amount of rent as revenue to the British government. So this land settlement system, which was particularly under the zamindari system, and some of it were also a part of the Rotwari system. It was implemented first in Bengal and then into the presidency of different eastern states. If we talk about when we talk about Bihar, or we talk about Uttar Pradesh near Gorakhpur and all. So these zamindari system, it literally hit hard the farmers of our country, and nothing was done to improve their condition. So this was something literally which actually shifted the farmers from being self-sufficient to becoming economically dependent on the British people or on the zamindars. So when the farmers started producing crops that was meant largely for the zamindars and ultimately to the Britishers, they were forced to involve themselves into commercialization of crops or commercialization of agriculture. Now, what is this commercialization of agriculture? Now, when we talk about commercialization of agriculture, it means that the farmers were now forced to produce not only food crops but cash crops. Cash crops, as the name suggests, that it is a crop that is being produced in order to generate cash. So that led towards the commercialization of agriculture, that farmers were now hardly able to improve their economic condition, because instead of producing these food crops, these farmers were ultimately forced to produce cash crops. There was some progress that was done in irrigation system, and in order to generate more of revenue through these cash crops that farmers were ultimately growing for the British people. But largely these farmers, they were facing lots of problems related to famine. They were facing problems of salinization of the soil, drainage problems, so that all, created a situation where these farmers, they were now becoming tenants. They were shifting themselves to some other kind of profession. They started working as remember we talked about begar. So they were getting 2 square meals from the Britishers, and they started working for the Britishers, where they would work whole day and they will just get some amount of food for their survival. So all these problems literally damaged the agriculture sector of our country. The sector which was flourishing, which was growing, and farmers were self-sufficient, farmers were satisfied, they were happy. They were now being hit hard by this land settlement system, which initiated zamindari system, and then the second was the rotwari system, which literally hit hard the farmers. On top of that, there was commercialization of agriculture, which further let down the farmers and forced them to become more dependent on the British community. Now we move on to another segment, that is the industrial sector. When we talk about industrial sector, I will not shy from saying this, that there wasn't any strong industrial base at that time. Why? Because India was largely an agriculture country, and it had its industries in the form of a manufacturing unit that was basically textile and handicraft industry. And India was a country with good amount of population, and it was a country which was rich in art and all these kind of artistic work, and it had its demand also, so people were into these kind of things. But these handicraft industries that existed at that time, they were not able to correspond with the modern industrial base that was coming up with the process of industrialization of the British. So the primary objective of this colonial government, it started becoming to systematically deindustrialize this country. When we talk about deindustrialization of this country, it means that we are going to create a situation in which there is going to be a condition where more and more people will now be shifting towards farming or agriculture. This is also known as the progressive ruralization. So when we talk about deindustrialization, this will also result in progressive ruralization. What does it mean? What happened when this famous handicraft industry just started declining? Because these industries, they were not able to get the produce that they needed for their handicraft manufacturing units, because farmers were now shifting more towards cash crops. So then what happened, that these handicraft persons, they started moving towards the farmers, being towards their farm areas also. They started doing farming because this industry was declining. Now all these industrialist people or handicraft workers and the farmers, they all started producing goods, that was being exported to the British country. So they all started producing those crops that was being exported as raw materials from this country. And then these raw materials that got exported to the British, they had this process of industrialization. They started manufacturing their finished goods, and they started bringing back the same goods to our country. So it was a twofold exploitation or progressive deindustrialization of this country. First, India became an exporter of raw materials, and second, it created a market for the British goods. Those British goods that was being manufactured in Britain, in Manchester. So India became a market to this British good. So, before I move on, I'd just like to add one important interesting thing, is that when India existed and it was producing its own crop, you must have heard about muslin cloth and other silk cloth, which was very good in quality. So it was so good in quality that a 20 yard, the length would be 20 yard. 20 yard, it could be equivalent to around 18.67 meters. And if it was that much of length, 20 yard lengthwise and 1 yard breadthwise, so that much broad and big muslin cloth could be folded into and could be passed through a fingering. It was so soft and so smooth. You can well imagine the quality of this muslin cloth. It not only during the British period, but when French people, they came around 2000 BC. The French mummies, you must have heard, they were wrapped into Indian muslin cloth. So that was a quality of Indian goods. So Britishers, their industries could not cope up with this quality of Indian goods. So that is what they started for deindustrialization of this country, and they started forcing India to export the raw materials, because they cannot produce in their own country because of the geographical limitations. So India was forced to produce the raw materials, and they took it there in their country and they started manufacturing the finished goods and they brought it back to our country, because those goods, they not only had market in the world but they had market in India also, and probably they would exploit the Indian consumers by charging higher prices for the product. So this led towards the slow rate of development of modern industries in India, though later on there were lot many jute mills that came up in West Bengal, cotton mills in Ahmedabad, and then there was steel, iron and steel company TISCO, Tata Iron and Steel Company, that got formed in the year 1907. So all these things started growing slowly, but till that time also there wasn't any capital goods industry. When we talk about capital goods industry, it means that an industry that is going to produce a machine which is going to produce goods which could be used for final consumption. So there wasn't any capital goods industry, and that was not also being exported from British to India, or India did not export also. They were not allowed to import the machines, because that would actually harm the British economy. So that became the limitations, and that led towards the decline in the gross domestic product. When we talk about gross domestic product, it refers to the value of goods and services that is produced within the country. And there was a net of import and export. When we take that, becomes the gross national product. Domestic means produced within the land of the country or on the land of the country. So all these further added on with the limited area of the operations. So industries had limited areas of operations. These industries that got established, that further reduced the profitability of the industrial sector, and it could not flourish. Now we move on to another important segment, that is we talk of foreign trade. When we talk about foreign trade, it refers to the trade that India can indulge into with different countries of the world. So foreign trade means how much amount of goods that we are importing or exporting from importing from and exporting to different countries of the world. So India was largely not allowed to have a foreign trade policy of its own. So it was largely restrictive in nature. And this restrictive foreign trade policy that was forced upon India by the British led to unbalanced balance of trade. Unbalanced balance of trade means that India was exporting certain goods which was at a lower value, and importing goods which were of higher prices. So that created a kind of imbalance for India, but then it generated revenue to the British. And moreover, British had monopoly control over India's trade. So that monopoly control over India's trade limited Indians to decide on who is going to be their foreign or trading partners. So most of the goods that was being traded with was with Britain only, and there were very few countries like you can talk of China, Ceylon, that is Sri Lanka at present, and Iran, which was called Persia at the time. So that is what India trade. These were some of the countries with which India had some trade relationship. Moreover, there was an opening of the Suez Canal that took place in the year that led largely towards the expansion of trade with Britain and India. So that further added an advantage to the British government, that with the opening of the Suez Canal that took place in the year 1869, the British were now able to export more of their goods much easily and in a limited time span. So that further added to their foreign trade policy. So all these kind of restrictive foreign trade policy that was imposed upon by the British government into our country, it literally drained of the wealth of our country and started making this country financially weak. It could not take its own decision because it was financially dependent upon the British government. Whatever income that was being generated through this foreign trade was used by British people to make payments for their expenses that they had to make in their offices, which was set up by the colonial government in Britain or in our country or in different parts of the world. So whatever British were doing in reference to their imperialism or expansion of their country and the expenditure that they had to incur upon, that all was being financed by these kind of exploitative temperaments and policies that they had in our country, which was a colony to them. Now let us move on to another important segment, that is demographic condition of this country. When we talk about the demographic condition, here we are going to talk about the nature of population that existed. Here we are going to talk about the population of our country, the quality of population of this country. And the first population census that was conducted was in the year 1881, and that could not get completed. And later on, it was in the year 1921 that another population census was conducted, that gave a detailed idea about the population figure of our country. Now, when we talk about the population, we need to take into consideration the demographic transition that India went through during this period. Let us talk about the period before 1921. In the period before 1921, India was in the first stage of demographic transition. Now, when we talk about demographic transition, what do we understand by demographic transition? This was a word that was initiated by Frank Noteston in the year 1945. And he has defined the concept of demographic transition in reference to the rate of growth of birth and the death. So birth rates and death rates, their correlation is going to determine the stages of demographic transition. So it is being said that in the first stage there is high birth rate and high death rate. In the second stage, when we are going to talk about, there is going to be higher birth rate but lower death rate. Lower death rate happens because now there is going to be less famine, probably some amount of medical facilities starts being available to the country. So that is making will make the country enter into the second stage. Third stage, we move on, that there is a decline in the birth rate also, and there is low death rates, decline in the death rate. So both the birth rates and the death rates are declining. So the second stage becomes the stage when there is high birth rates and low death rates. That was the state that that can lead to population explosion also. So that creates additional burden onto the economy. So this demographic transition phase is important here because the total population of India and its rate of growth was very high at this stage when we talk about in the year 1921. So, but when we talk about during the colonial rule, it was largely comparatively limited because though India has entered into a second stage, but the amount of facilities that it could be made available by the Britishers in terms of food availability, in terms of health facilities, that was not available to this country. Though comparatively we can say, considerably we can say that there was a decline in death rates and increase in birth rate, but on an average, if we compare it, both of them were at a lower level. So even at this particular scenario, that where the birth rate is not high and the death rate is also not very high. Okay, so we found that the quality of population was not good. When we talk about quality of population, we take into consideration different social indicators or social development indicators, like the literacy rate, it was less than 16%. If we talk about the public health facilities that was available, that was also not that much good. That so that led largely to disease. So there were overall mortality rate that was very high, and particularly if we talk about the infant mortality, it was very high at that particular time. And life expectancy, it was very low, that people who are now surviving till 68 years, at present we can say that it is 68 years to 70 years life expectancy. At that time it was just 44 years. People could live till up to the age of 44 years. But even, so it is very, very difficult to specify the extent of poverty at that time. But there is no doubt that the poverty prevailed in India during the colonial period, which literally contributed to the worsening of the demographic condition of India's population. So in total, what we conclude here is this, that though India has entered into a second stage, but still the kind of facilities that was available to our citizens at that particular time spoke voluminously about very low social development. Literacy rate was also very low, or They were not public health. They were not adequate public health facilities, for example, hospitals, schools, etc., available to the citizens of the country. There were no proper sanitation. That led to worse breaking down of different kinds of epidemics and worse, life-taking diseases that increased the mortality rates of people, and those who survived, they had very low life expectancy. Okay, so whatever we have talked till now, it's all saying that the demographic condition, various other conditions, economic condition of our citizen was not, good. Then we move on to another concept. Here we are going to take that is occupational structure. By now we all have understood that largely India was an agrarian economy. Almost 70 to 75% of the workforce, they were dependent on agriculture sector. Very less number of people were dependent on manufacturing sector. It was just 10%, and in the service sector it was around 15 to 20% of the people involved in service sector. Those who were into manufacturing sector in the form of handicraft industries or textile industries, because of the progressive ruralization or deindustrialization policy that was adopted by British government, they shifted back into agriculture sector. So overall India was an agrarian economy, and that too it was an agriculture sector that was not flourishing, largely because of the oppressive policies of the British government. There were some states which experienced decline in the agriculture dependence. We can talk about the states of Maharashtra, Gujarat. The states that got decline into this because they were largely into the service sector, because it had ports from where Britishers could come and enter. So that led towards the development of railways also. So we will be talking about how these railways developed in the infrastructure sector, that they were basic infrastructure available to the citizens of this country, because actually that facilitated the business to the Britishers. So they started developing roads. They started coming up with railways in the year 1850, that from Bombay to Thane, the first rail that got started. So posts and telegraph system got developed. So all these small infrastructure building that got initiated into this country was largely to promote and facilitate British people go on with their economic exploitation of this country. So we conclude this chapter by saying that the impact of 200 long years of British rule literally saddled our agriculture sector, and the industrial sector was also becoming obsolete and outdated, and it wanted to become modern. And there were lots of social, economic and political challenges that was getting ready for an independent country to take for itself. So this gives you an idea that India was a golden bird. India was a rich country, but because of exploitative nature, because of the oppressive policies of the British that was adopted towards our country, it literally brought a downfall to our country. And if you correlate this chapter with the chapter that we did in our class 10th, that is chapter 2 of nationalism in India, there you also have studied that how Indians, they were literally exploited, and Mahatma Gandhi said that it is we who have allowed them to rule over us in his in one of his book. So Hind Swaraj. So we have given them the permission to rule over us. We have cooperated with them, and we should not cooperate with them anymore. And that is how we started with that non-cooperation movement, and ultimately with the civil disobedience movement started, we got independence. So the conclusion is that we have given them this chance to rule over us. That is why they brought all these exploitative activities on us. But then actually they literally saddled our economy, and economy was into doldrums, and it literally needed an effort to pull it back for providing a better humane living conditions to the citizens of this country. Thank you.